Hey everybody, welcome to Here's Out. I am Patrick, and my co-host Paul is on special assignment at the moment. So stepping in is the wonderful little black cat, Jet. You will see that black mass move around as I'm talking. What are we talking about today? We're talking about directors, there's no polite way to put this, who have dropped off in form. If you talk to anybody who's into movies, they'll talk about the great directors, and they'll usually mention a certain number of names. A lot of those names that have been mentioned over the years as, oh, well, everything they do is quality, everything they do is brilliant, are now being mentioned as, oh, God, they haven't made something good in a while, or, oh, they've really lost form, or, oh, I wish they'd stopped sooner. A lot of really sad and negative things. So I did a little bit of research and a little bit of polling, a little bit of a straw poll talking to other movie fans, such as yourselves. And I found that there are five names that kind of come up. There are more. You know, people will mention Peter Jackson, etc. sometimes. But I think these are the five that really come up. We've got Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese, the wonderful Ridley Scott, Francis Ford Coppola, and the now confirmed is retired from directing, Clint Eastwood. At no point in this video am I going to say these are not great directors who have not directed great films. But realistically, folks, we're all starting to feel that we're seeing drop off. And thanks to Disclosure Day, which has been divisive, Steven Spielberg was kind of the impetus for this chat. I don't know how you felt about Disclosure Day. When I saw it, I had mixed feelings, but overall I was very disappointed. And whether or not it was a Spielberg film, I would have felt disappointed. But because it was Steven Spielberg and John Williams, that kind of combination that I think is always just going to be pure gold. Because for most of my lifetime, it has been. You know, some of my favorite films, Jaws, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, when it comes to Disclosure Day. These are films that I think are just, you know, they are Mount Rushmore movies. But yeah, I tried to get feedback from you know, just regular people. And it did seem to be, some of it's quite ageist. Some people are like, oh, well, you know, they're getting older, so they're losing touch. I don't think that's a fair argument. I don't think losing touch with society or societal norms or anything like that is actually what's really affecting the quality of output. Some people have pointed out they're getting older now and are not getting the support from studio systems they used to get. And I think that might be a comment that comes up more around Scorsese, thanks to, there was a time where he could get anything greenlit, and then you have, you know, him having to go to the Irishman for, or go to Netflix for the Irishman, and particularly Francis Ford Coppola for Megalopolis, having to, I think he sold a vineyard, among other things, to self-finance what was ultimately a industry term flop. I'm just going to say a massive disappointment to him and everyone else, I'm pretty sure. Yeah, so I want dialogue in the comments. I'll give my thoughts on this, but I want to hear what you all think. I think there are very many reasons why directors fall off, and I'm going to come back to that after I actually do a little bit of numbers. Well, we have a little bit of science to this opinion. It's not really science. I just did some numbers. Now, get ready to rage in the comments because, and I'm going to pull up the first one, I did some graphs. And you're going to hate this because the sources I used that were readily available as to how the general world were rating the films of these wonderful people, I used IMDb and Rotten Tomatoes. So I pulled the data from there and graphed the careers for cinema releases. So this is not necessarily TV shows. There might be the odd bit of bad data in here that maybe it was something that didn't get released on the big screen, etc. But these are their directorial credits. I am on record as not believing in Rotten Tomatoes or IMDb in particular as a good rating system. So if you're trying to choose what to watch, I don't think those are the ways to go. A lot of people say go use Metacritic. I tried to do Metacritic numbers as well. Just it wasn't possible to get it covered. But if you look over here, and where's my little pointer? I'm gonna have a little fun with Mr. Pointer Hand. Hello, Pointer Hand. Look at Pointer Hand. Now, this little Pointer Hand, Steven Spielberg has had. Oh, Pointer's disappearing. Come on, Pointer. This is Paul. If you're watching, I'm sorry. I'm making so many mistakes. Everybody, forgive me. I'm flying solo at the moment. So, Steven Spielberg, Rotten Tomatoes, the audience and the critic scores. As you can see, there's a lot of parallels. There's a few discrepancies. It's not important what they are, because what we're looking for is, if there was a real drop off, you would see quality up and down, and then an actual curve down the way, which for one of the directors you can see. But I gotta say, for Steven Spielberg, no. And a lot of people say don't Rotten Tomatoes. Let's go IMDb. Very, very similar. This shows that during any director's career, there are ups and downs, but people tend to remember 3 or 4 quality hits, and ignore maybe the 1 or 2 duds that were in between that. Now, nobody's going to forget, Steven Spielberg's 1941, was it 41, 42, 1941? Everybody knows the big turkeys, but also these are prolific directors who have done so much that sometimes you'll be like, oh, they did that. I didn't even know they directed it, is quite often the refrain. Steven's not the only one that's going to take this treatment, though, because look at Ridley Scott. Talk about an up and down career, and quite literally up and down. Look at that graph. And similarly, you can see all over the map as far as quality goes. When I say quality, the perceived quality. Personally, I think Steven Spielberg's record stands very highly, and I think a lot of the films that are rated lowly shouldn't be rated as lowly. I think Ridley Scott, on the other hand, has always been hit and miss. Just because Gladiator II and a few things have recently been duds, I think you can find that Ridley Scott was never massively consistent. It's easier to be consistent with less movies, by the way. We talked about that previously on the channel with James Cameron. In a 10-year period, James Cameron made nothing but bangers, nothing but great stuff. And then after, in my opinion, after Titanic, even though by the numbers it looks like his career just kept floating up the way even, I think his talent was wasted on a bunch of Avatar movies. So you gotta admit there's a personal angle to all this, folks. Now, I'm just imagining what's being said in the comments, and I do really look forward to reading them and responding to them. I think we'll just work through the directors. Martin Scorsese is an obvious one, because of things like Goodfellas and Casino. The big Mean Streets, the big Scorsese hits where everybody's thinking this is amazing. They forget that he did have other less successful projects, or things that were seen as less quality. And you can see that represented here, but overall you can see quite a high average on the Rotten Tomatoes. Now, The Irishman, not everybody, but anecdotally people are like, oh, sure, look, The Irishman was terrible. It didn't get rated anywhere near as badly as people think it did. A lot of people softened on it. A lot of people had issues with the de-aging, had issues with the length, had issues with the release strategy, all of these things. But not as many people had an issue with the storytelling or the quality or the actual, value of the movie. Personally, I actually think it got away too lightly, and I think Irishman should have been rated much lower. I purposely haven't put up. I have all the data of which films when, but I promised Paul I would never turn this into a super nerd me thing. So while he's out, I'm not going to do that. But yeah, you can see this. Scorsese, up and down, but again, up and down in the right end of the chart. That's what all of these wonderful directors have. The things we perceive as terrible are being measured against things that we perceive as great. So for every 1941, there's a Schindler's List. You've got hits and misses. Actually, sorry, I'm going to do Clint Eastwood before I save Coppola for last. Clint Eastwood's a funny one. A lot of people still think of him as an actor, but he's directed so many movies, and as you can see, to varying acclaim. Very varying acclaim. Clint is one of those people where you can really see some low points. And I would argue that of all the people so far, Clint is the one that is easy to see what would be called a drop-off. Similarly, you can sort of see some serious lows here. Now, I'm not mentioning the movies in particular because I don't want that to be the focus. I know some of you be like, "Oh, this would be a better video if we could talk about the specific movies." I'm really talking about this as trends and perception. And I think it's specific movies that create that trend or perception, which is why I don't want to be distracted by that. Um, like you could easily just talk about Megalopolis all day long when it comes to Francis Ford Coppola, but good old Fran, well, as I call him because we're friends, or sometimes I'm just like, hey, big FFC. Yeah, everybody knows that's not true. You can see here, great, 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 bad, great, okay, great, great. I should be using the pointer finger for this. I'm going to use the pointer finger to go, look at the Godfather era. Because let's face it, that's really what we're talking about. And then if you draw a trend line for Francis Ford Coppola, he is the one that I think fits the argument. I think the argument is, put simply, that maybe some people peaked and then it's been a constant decline. I would argue that even though it's thrown at Spielberg because of a disclosure day or because somebody didn't like the Fabelmans or whatever it might be, or like I said with Scorsese not doing the things that people want him to do, and again like the Irishman being so big and a little unwieldy in some ways, and similarly, I didn't particularly enjoy the later movies of Clint Eastwood from a personal point of view. Ridley Scott, as I say, for me, was all over the place anyway. But I think Francis Ford Coppola is what people are really thinking of when they say, oh, some directors just peaked too early. And I did the numbers on people like David Fincher, who somebody mentioned, and I was like, I just think you're wrong. And thankfully, the data agreed with me. Wouldn't have mattered if the data agreed with me. I don't think Fincher's had a drop off. I think it's just different tastes, and people having different expectations. Peter Jackson, similarly, I decided wasn't worth including, even though Peter got mentioned, because so much of his career is inextricably linked to Lord of the Rings and Hobbit. I'm trying to remember who. There was one other director. Oh, my list is elsewhere. But yeah, I want you to shout and I'll do a follow up, and I'll do numbers and add them in the comments. If anybody here thinks there is another, and I mean genuinely famous movie director who's had 10 plus full feature releases, because there's no point in talking about somebody who's done 3 amazing films. You have to have a long-term body of work and have advanced in age yourself. The age part of this discussion is truly part of it. If Christopher Nolan barely counts in this respect, but again, Chris was mentioned by some people. Again, I call him Chris because when we're hanging out and sometimes I'm giving him some directing tips, he says, "Call me Chris. Mr. Nolan's too formal for us." Yeah, let me know, but please don't pull out directors who've done 4 films and go, see, they were all brilliant. And like Tarantino hasn't done enough for him to even be considered, or at this stage, and I know everybody's getting older, you can see the people we're talking about here. In this case, these directors all fit a certain mold of coming out of the gate, becoming really good, becoming iconic for things. Like everybody on this screen has at least 2 movies that the general public who aren't film nerds like me or like some of you would be able to mention. At least 2. In some cases, 10. So if you're going to suggest a director, keep that in mind, because this really is about whether or not the legendary, prolific, perceived high-quality blue ribbon directors do all eventually just drop off in quality. And I thought they did too. I started buying into it. But the more I looked, the more I started thinking, maybe it's actually just in our heads that we can have 1 or 2 disappointments and just paint a whole broad brush. Do I think that all 5 of these directors on screen have dropped off from their high point? Yes. Do I think there's just a massive recent trend that it's only the last 5 films they make in their career, because once they hit a certain age, they've just timed out of talent? I don't agree with that. And the numbers don't agree with that. I hate to say it. I'm going to close this video in the most annoying way possible. I'm going to say I don't agree with the numbers. Even though I created all those graphs and pulled all the data and did it all, I did it with gritted teeth because I find things like IMDb's numbered rating system to not really be an accurate representation of quality of a movie. And I might do a whole other video on that soon. But for now, as a little, thank you for flying solo with me. This is going to be the first. Paul's going to be on assignment for a little while. I'm going to mess around. This format will change a little bit visually as well as content wise. And let's see what you think of this video. Please leave any thoughts if you're a long time listener down below as to what you think I can improve here, or what you think I'm doing wrong, or should I go more in depth? Should I be less in depth? Should I talk less? If I talk less, trust me, the cat, talented, but not much of a talker, so it won't work for YouTube. So the talking for me is non-negotiable. But I would love to know what you all think. Definitely about the topic. Get in the comments. Let us know whether you think this is just all bunkum and complete horse crap, or if you really think that you agree with it and you've got another 10 examples that you could back up. Aside from that, it's that time, everybody. Oh yeah. Subscribe, like, share, tell your friends, build the community with us. The more that you're shouting in the comments, how much would you love it for people to be piling on in behind you when you're calling me a dumbass, for them to join in and go, yeah, you're right, he's a dumbass. Like the cat, though. I also only want nice comments about the cat. Any mean comments about the cat, you will not be my friend anymore. With that, the usual sign off happens. I've been Patrick. That's been Jet. And we've been Hear Us Out, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.